What's up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and we haven't talked about Burning Abyss in a long time, so that's exactly what we're going to do today. We have a Burning Abyss / PK Fire deck profile, so let's go ahead and get into it. So first we have 3 Terratop, 1 Takedown and 1 Tour Guide. Those 5 cards are standard in every single Burning Abyss deck. They give you your free and easy Dante, so there's no reason not to play them. For the Burning Abyss engine, we play 3 Skarm, 2 Farfa, and then for the 1-ofs we have Alec, Graf, Seer, Libic, Barbar, and Calcab. Most of this is standard except for maybe Alec and Calcab. And I like Alec over the 3rd Farfa because they essentially do the same thing, they both out monsters, except you don't want multiple Farfas, and so rather than playing it as a 3-of, I decided to play 2 Farfa and Alec, because they answer similar situations without having to deal with multiples. However, Alec also has specific situations that it answers, such as when resolving chain links. And what I mean by that is a lot of times you'll have a monster whose effect will trigger during a chain link, but what you can do is send Alec with Beatrice, and then depending on how the chain sets up, you might be able to negate that monster's effect. And so a common example of that would be when your opponent activates something like a Hero Lives, you can chain Beatrice sending Alec, and then Alec can negate that Shadow Mist when summoned to keep it from getting that search. And there are a few other examples, but it does come up every now and then. I don't know why more people don't play Calcab, but I really like being able to out back row on either player's turn. And while you don't really need to worry that much about back row, sometimes it can be troublesome, and Calcab gives you an in-engine out to answer that. And then for the Phantom Knights, we play the standard 3-2-1 ratio. So obviously you need the Phantom Knights in this deck now because they just give you more plays and they give you searchable traps. So there's really no downside to playing them. Like, they raise your ceiling and give you searchable traps. Like, that's just too good not to play, in my opinion. So for the rest of the monsters, these are all sort of tech slots. They can be anything you want. But I really liked what they did at YCS Liverpool, and that was main decking 3 Chaos Hunters. So what Chaos Hunter does is, when your opponent special summons a monster, you discard a card to special summon Chaos Hunter from your hand. And then while it's on the field, your opponent can't remove cards from play. So it's really relevant against ABCs, especially because they won't be able to summon Buster Dragon if you have Chaos Hunter. They'll summon the Gadget or Photon Thrasher, and then summon the ABC monster, and then they're going to go into Tsukiyomi, and when they summon the Tsukiyomi, you special summon your Chaos Hunter, and now that they've already committed to that 1 rank 4, they're not setting up for next turn really, but they're also not summoning Buster Dragon, so it puts them in a really tough position, and can really set you up for your next turn if you can discard something like a Skarm or a Graf to get that Skarm. Then you can just search Tour Guide at the end of the turn, and then push through their back row to win the game. So even if you don't do that, it still has 2500 attack, so you can push through their boards with it, which is really good. And while it's not really good against Metalfoes, it can come up sometimes where you can keep it from banishing a counter. And so it's not bad in that matchup either, it's just not ideal. But between Chaos Hunter and Cherries, it gives me 6 cards in my main deck that, when going second, will keep my opponent from summoning Buster Dragon. And that's extremely relevant because going second against ABCs is normally very, very difficult. Because if they have Buster Dragon up, all they're going to do is banish your Beatrice or your Dante or whatever, and it just makes it impossible to play against them. But with these 6 cards, along with the 2 Maxx's, it really makes going second against them not as bad. Like, it's actually pretty good sometimes. And so I'm really loving these additions to the deck, especially Chaos Hunter. Cherries is already sort of standard, but Chaos Hunter has been an awesome addition. So next we play 10 spells as well as 10 traps. So it's a 50 card main deck, 30 monsters, 10 spells, 10 traps. And first for the spells, we play 3 Allure of Darkness, just to help draw us through our deck and kind of break up some of the awkward hands. Like, you might have Burning Abyss monsters and Phantom Knights. So what you'll do is you'll activate Allure of Darkness, and whether you draw into a Burning Abyss or Phantom Knight, you'll just banish the other one. So if I open up Skarm and Cloak, if I activate Allure and draw into a Farfa, I'm going to banish the Cloak. So I have 2 Burning Abyss monsters, now I can make a play. Or vice versa, like, you'll banish the Burning Abyss if you have 2 Phantom Knights and then make a play. So Allure is really good for just sort of breaking up those awkward hands. Then next we play 2 Pot of Desires. I was considering playing 3, but I really don't want to draw multiples of Desires. Like, it's just so bad in multiples, and there's still a lot of cards in the deck that I don't want to banish. However, just, you know, Desires is just so strong. Even though there's stuff you don't want to banish, it's just definitely worth playing. It's just way too good not to play. Then next we play 2 Mass Change Second. This is another one of my favorite cards in the deck, and I've always loved Dark Law / Mass Change Second in Burning Abyss decks. Like, since the beginning, it's been one of my favorites, and I even like it more now because going first, it's another thing to stop the Buster Dragon. It's also going to stop your opponent from destroying their scales if they're playing Metalfoes. But also when going second against those decks, especially second against ABCs, when they tag out their Buster Dragon to the little ABC pieces, you can summon Dark Law and then banish them when you destroy them. So it's keeping them from summoning the 2nd Buster Dragon or the 3rd Buster Dragon. And it forces them to make a different play sometimes than they normally would. And it's so good. Like, it's just insane. And then the last 3 spells are 1 Reinforcements of the Army, 1 Foolish Burial, and 1 Raigeki. Rhoda and Foolish are essentially other monsters, so they don't really count as spells that much. But Raigeki was the 50th card that I added into the deck. It used to be a Soul Charge, and Soul Charge was mainly for reviving Chaos Hunter, but the problem with Soul Charge is that it's useless on most of your first turns, and it's only good late game. But as we all know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like a first turn / second turn game. Like, what you do in your opening turns is way more important than what you do late game. So while you can bring back Chaos Hunter with Soul Charge, that's not going to happen early game, and it probably won't happen late game either. But Raigeki gives me an answer to the boards that will beat me. It gives me an answer to Buster Dragon, an answer to ALKAHEST, an answer to, well, not Unicorn, but it can answer a lot of boards that would give you trouble. And so I'm a big fan of Raigeki. And then for the traps, once again we played 10 of them. We have 3-dimensional barrier, 3 fog blade, 3 strike, and 1 warning. The fog blades and solemns are pretty standard, but the newcomers are the dimensional barriers, which I'm a huge fan of. Like, the ability to shut your opponent off for a turn is just uncanny right now. And Burning Abyss is definitely a fast enough deck to be able to capitalize. So if you're playing against ABC, it's another card that's going to keep them from making Buster Dragon. Against Pendulums, with Strike, it's another card that stopped them from Pendulum summoning. And even in the mirror match, you can stop Dante's and stuff. But not only does it stop your opponent from summoning, it also negates their effects. So you can draw it to an established board. And while yes, as a trap, it's never good to draw against an established board, but you can draw it against the board, set it, and then negate that monster's effect. And so it's really not that bad. Something else I like about it is that it's chainable. So I also was considering main decking Anti-Spell Fragrance. That's another card that if you go first, it can stop Buster Dragon, because if you stop Hanger, they're not summoning that Buster Dragon that turn. And it's also good against Pendulums. However, my problem with Anti-Spell Fragrance is that if they draw the out, and that's it. But there is no drawing the out to barrier. If they draw MST or Twin Twister, you just chain it, and then they still can't summon that type of monster. And so that's why I ultimately decided to main deck it over the Anti-Spell Fragrances. And if you look at the side deck, you'll see that's where the 3 Anti-Spell Fragrances are. And so those will come in every single game against Pendulums, obviously, but let's go ahead and move on to the extra deck. We play 15 cards, we play 2 Dantes. The third rarely comes up, and so I felt it was better just to take it out for like a Cherries target. 2 Breaksword, 1 LEVIAIR. I'm considering going up to 2 LEVIAIRs. It comes up every now and then, but not all the time. So it's like it doesn't hurt to have, but you kind of want it too, you know? I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. And 1 Totem Bird to make with the Speedroids, 1 Giga Brilliant, 1 COREBAGE, and then for the level 4 we play Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. I was also considering playing Rhapsody and Berserk maybe instead of the Totem Bird, because it's pretty relevant every now and then against ABCs. You can banish their pieces. You can also banish like Metalfoes counters and combinations, fusions if they left it in the graveyard. And so Rhapsody does come up every now and then. It's not a bad choice at all. And the final Xyz monster we play is 1 Beatrice, of course. Can't play Burning Abyss without Beatrice, right? So we only play 1 Synchro, we play 1 Virgil, which you can summon. Even though we don't play Rubik, we can use Cherries as the tuner. So we can use Cherries in like a Phantom Knight monster, Cherries and a Tour Guide or something like that. For the fusions, we play 1 Dante Pilgrim, 1 Dark Law, and 1 ABC Buster Dragon for Cherries. And the last card is a Treat Toad, aka Totally Awesome, also for Cherries. Totally Awesome is pretty tough to play around, so I figured it might be best to side up for Cherries. But again, this could be any other Cherries target. It could have been a Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, which it was before Totally Awesome. But right now, with ABCs being so popular, I don't see Blue Eyes being really much of a threat right now. So I'm not too worried about Blue Eyes. Another thing that I was considering was FULLMETALFOES ALKAHEST in the side for Cherries, or in the main extra deck for Cherries, because again, it's like so hard to play around, and Metalfoes are a very relevant deck. Like, I see this format as being sort of a 2-deck format right now. You have ABCs, which are the most popular by far, but then you have Metalfoes. And Metalfoes are not as popular as ABC, but they're arguably just as good. Especially if you're not playing either of those 2 decks. Like, those 2 decks are just so far ahead of the other decks right now. That's hard to compete if you're anything else. But the reason Burning Abyss can compete against them is because it can grind better than them, and it plays more traps than them. And so what happens essentially is, when you're playing against ABCs, if you Cherries them or summon Chaos Hunter, it turns them into a rank 4 deck. Now, Burning Abyss is still better than every single rank 4 deck. Like, there is no way you lose to rank 4 decks playing Burning Abyss. And so that's the whole thing. Same thing against Pendulums. If you activate Anti-Spell Fragrance, like, you're not losing to them. They just turn into a fusion deck, which you just can't lose to. It's impossible. Like, your deck is just far better than those decks when they can't play 100%. But you can beat them when they're like at 60, 70, or even 80%. So Burning Abyss is close enough to the competition to be able to do this, despite those 2 decks being so overwhelmingly strong. Coupled with the fact that Burning Abyss can grind like no other, it just makes it really hard for those decks, if they don't have all of their resources, to beat you. And if they can't beat you, then you win. And so for the side deck, we play 2 Sticky String Kaijus, 2 Vanity's Fiend, 2 System Downs, 2 Cosmic Cyclones, 3 Twin Twisters, 1 Mischief for the Gnomes for the mirror match, and 3 anti-spells. And so the Kaijus are for answering established boards. I usually side them in against Metalfoes. Again, ALKAHEST is a huge problem. So is Mithril, but not as much on my turn. But it's still an out to it. I would also play it against any deck that's like summoning Zulkin, Crystal Wing, stuff like that. Treat Toad decks. Sticky String Kaiju is just sort of like the jack of all trades, answer your board type of card. Vanity's Fiend is really good going first against a lot of decks. It's just sort of auto win. And it's especially good in matchups where Cherries and Chaos Hunter aren't. So like if I'm playing against Treat Toad heroes, Chaos Hunter might might not be that good, but Vanity's Fiend definitely is. 2 systems down for ABCs, as well as maybe the Rogue Cosmo deck, I don't know. I mean, they might come up. Then 2 Cosmic Cyclones, which I really like right now. They're so good against Metalfoes. Like, banishing a Metalfoes fusion makes all of their plays that used to be so free very costly. So fusion is really good because it's searchable and it replaces itself almost immediately. But when it doesn't replace itself, all your fusion summons are -1s now. And then also, they only play 1 Metalfoe fusion, and so if you banish their 1, the only way to fuse is with Full Metal Fusion, which is a counter trap. Which is a quick play spell. And so when they set it from the deck with a Metalfoe card, they can't activate it on that same turn because it's a quick play, so they have to wait until your turn. So it slows their deck down and still makes their plays a -1. Then they have to make Mithrilium to put the Full Metal Fusion back in the deck in order to fuse again. And the only way you're losing the Metalfoes is the fusions. And so this effectively deals with that problem. I also like it in the mirror match for banishing Fog Blades. Against ABC, it's another way to banish Union Hanger. You can also banish them pieces when they equip to something else. So like when they tag out the Buster Dragon, they're going to usually equip A to something to keep that monster from getting Farfoot. But then you can just banish that A with the Cosmic Cyclone and then you're good. So Cosmic Cyclone has a lot of uses and a lot of matchups, and it's definitely one of my favorite side cards right now. Next we have 3 Twin Twisters, and these are just for like any deck that plays a lot of traps. I'm not specifically worried about traps because this is a Burning Abyss deck. Like, your stuff floats, you don't need to worry about traps, but you do need to worry about cards such as Matter Spectre Tornado or Dimensional Barrier, or if you might play Paleozoic Frogs or something. And so I really like this for answering those type of traps that aren't like standard. It's like strikes aren't that bad, Fog Blades aren't that bad, but some of those Paleozoic ones are, and like Matter Spectre Tornado is pretty bad too. So it's just out to anything like that. Then 1 Mischief for the Gnomes for the mirror match. Still gotta play it for that. Maybe if I played any other type of Xyz deck, it's definitely worth the 1 spot it requires in every Burning Abyss side deck. If you play Burning Abyss, you should be playing Mischief for the Gnomes. And then finally we played 3 Anti-Spell Fragrance, which is auto win against Metalfoes or any Pendulum deck for that matter. So it's definitely necessary at 3 in the side deck or main deck even. But again, I just chose it for the side deck because I wanted Dimensional Barriers in the main. But both I think are really good, and so when I play against Metalfoes, I have 3 Barrier, 3 Anti-Spell, and 4 Counter Traps. So that means I have 10 cards in my deck that say you are not Pendulum Summoning this turn. So it makes the Metalfoe matchup much easier, when it's normally a very tough matchup due to ALKAHEST, Unicorn, Infinity if they play that, and even Mithrilium. But these 10 cards really make that matchup playable. But then once again, I really see this format as like a 2-deck format. Like, you have ABCs, you have Metalfoes, and you have everything else. So I'm really only siding for those 2 decks. The only cards that are like for anything else are like Twin Twisters and Vanity's Fiends, which also aren't bad against those 2 decks. It's like if you can handle ABCs and Metalfoes, you can probably do well in an event, because chances are that's all you're gonna see. Anything else with Burning Abyss should be easy, because Burning Abyss is still a very good deck. So you just put in a little bit for those 2 matchups and let the deck handle the rest. But alright guys, let me know what you think about this updated PK Fire deck list. Let me know if there are any changes you would make or any different ideas that you have. I'd love to hear them. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.